Schoolroom.
Schoolroom.
School run.
School run.
We hope to increase the safety of children who walk to school and cut the number of cars doing the school run.
School teacher.
School teacher.
School tie.
School tie.
Schoolwork.
Schoolwork.
Schoolyard.
Schoolyard.
Schooner.
Schooner.
Shtick.
Shtick.
Stumm.
Stumm.
The boss of the failed company is keeping stum about his role in the disaster.
Stumm.
Schwa.
Schwa.
Sciatic.
Sciatic.
Sciatica.
Sciatica.
Science.
Science.
Many leading scientists do not consider that science can give absolutely reliable knowledge. The founder of modern science, Isaac Newton.
Developments in science and technology.
What did you do in science class today?
The physical sciences.
Advertising is not an exact science. You're always taking a risk.
Science fiction.
Science fiction.
Science park.
Science park.
Scientific.
Scientific.
We believe in investing in scientific research.
The limits of scientific knowledge.
Decisions based on scientific evidence.
The international scientific community.
I'll keep accounts for the business, but I'm not scientific about it.
It hasn't been scientifically proven, though. Scientist.
Scientist.
Sci-fi.
Sci-fi.
Scimitar.
Scimitar.
Scintilla.
Scintilla.
There isn't a scintilla of evidence.
Scintillating.
Scintillating.
Scintillating conversation.
A scintillating performance.
Scintilla.
Scintillating.
Scion.
Scion.
A scion of an ancient Scottish family.
Scissors.
Scissors.
A pair of scissors.
Sclerosis.
Sclerosis.
Scoff.
Scoff.
David scoffed at her fears.
Officials scoffed at the idea.
You, a scientist? He scoffed.
She scoffed the plate of biscuits.
Scold.
Scold.
Do not scold the puppy, but simply and firmly say no.
Her father scolded her for upsetting her mother.
I got a scolding from my teacher.
Sconce.
Sconce.
Scone.
Scone.
Tea and scones.
Scoop.
Scoop.
A journalist looking for a scoop.
Scoop neck.
Scoop neck.
Scoot.
Scoot.
There's the bus. I'd better scoot.
She scooted off on her bike.
I scooted my chair over to their table.
He scooted over so I could sit down.
Scooter.
Scooter.
Scope.
Scope.
The need to define the scope of the investigation.
Measures to limit the scope of criminals' activities.
A full discussion of that issue is beyond the scope of this book. Let us extend the scope of the study to examine more factors.
The court's ruling narrowed the scope of the affirmative action programme. His efforts were too limited in scope to have much effect.
The scope for successful gardening increases dramatically with a greenhouse. There is considerable scope for further growth in the economy.
Let's go inside and scope out the menu.
Scorch.
Scorch.
The walls had been blackened and scorched by fire.
Direct sunlight will scorch the plant's leaves. The hot sand scorched our feet. He scorched out of the gate, almost crashing his new sports car.
There were scorch marks on the kitchen worktop where a hot pan had been placed.
Scorched earth policy.
Scorched earth policy.
Scorcher.
Scorcher.
It was a scorcher of a day. Scorching.
Scorching.
The scorching desert heat.
A scorching hot day.
Score.
Score.
At half-time the score was 1-1.
What's the score?
Is anybody keeping score?
The final score was Southampton 2, Leeds United 0.
A score of 90%.
The school's test scores have not improved.
A score of 90%.
He had an IQ score of 120.
A musical score. Who wrote the score for the movie?
As for the cost, you don't need to worry on that score. We are trying to attract managers who know the score.
Jack came back after 5 years to settle some old scores.
Deep scores in the wood. Great cheers went up when he scored in the final minute of the game.
She scored an average of 9.9 in the test.
He has scored 12 goals so far this season.
Each event will be scored separately.
Responses to the individual items are scored on a scale ranging from 0 to 12. Responses to the individual items are scored on a scale ranging from 0 to 12.
Too many MPs use debates as a chance to score political points. Too many MPs use debates as a chance to score political points. Advertising may be used to score points off the competition. You'll score points with your girlfriend if you send her roses.
Her new book has scored a spectacular success.
You'll score points with your girlfriend if you send her roses.
Her new book has scored a spectacular success.
Scoring the paper first makes it easier to fold.
The piece is scored for a soprano voice and orchestra.
He liked scoring off his pupils in his days as a teacher.
Our coach was escorted by a score of policemen.
Scores of victims were killed.
Friends came to help by the score. Scoreboard.
Scoreboard.
Scorecard.
Scorecard.
Score draw.
Score draw.
Scoreless.
Scoreless. A scoreless first half.
Scoreline.
Scoreline.
Scorer.
Scorer.
He was Palace's top scorer.
Score sheet.
Score sheet.
Scorn.
Scorn.
He felt scorn for his working-class parents.
Rachel looked at me with scorn.
Labour poured scorn on the Tory claim to be the party of law and order.
Many women scorn the use of makeup.
He scorned the government's record in dealing with crime.
Scornful.
Scornful.
A scornful look.
He was scornful of the women's movement.
Scorpio.
Scorpio.
Scorpion.
Scorpion.
Scot,
Scot.
Scotch.
Scotch.
2 scotches, please.
He issued an announcement to scotch rumours of his death.
Scotch broth.
Scotch broth.
Scotch egg.
Scotch egg.
scot-free,
Scot-free.
Scotch tape.
Scotch tape.
scot-free,
Scot-free.
Scotland Yard.
Scotland Yard.
Scots.
Scots.
Scotsman,
Scotsman.
Scotswoman.
Scotswoman.
Scottish.
Scottish.
The Scottish play.
The Scottish play. Scoundrel.
Scoundrel.
Scour.
Scour.
Her family began to scour the countryside for a suitable house.
Ada was scouring out the pans.
Over the years, the stream had scoured out a round pool in the rock. Scourer.
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 Scourge. Scourge.
The scourge of unemployment.
The scourge of war. Scouse.
Scouse.
Scouser.
Scouser.
Scout. Scout.
He sent 3 scouts ahead to take a look at the bridge. He sent 3 scouts ahead to take a look at the bridge.
He was spotted by a scout at the age of 13.
I'm scouting round for a place to stay.
American companies are keen to scout out business opportunities in Vietnam.
Scouting.
Scouting.
scoutmaster,
Scoutmaster. Scout.
Scouting.
scoutmaster,
Scowl. Scowl.
Patrick scowled, but did as he was told.
Mum scowled at him and refused to say anything.
She looked at me with a scowl.
Scrabble.
Scrabble.
He scrabbled for the light switch.
She was scrabbling around, searching for the door.
scraggly,
Scraggly.
His straggly grey beard.
scraggy,
Scraggy.
A scraggy neck.
scraggly,
Scrabble.
scraggly, scraggy, scram,
Scram, you two.
Scramble. Scramble.
They tried to scramble up the cliff.
She scrambled down the tree as quickly as she could.
Alan scrambled out of the way.
Mickey scrambled to his feet and hurried into the kitchen.
They were scrambling to give the impression that the situation was under control.
Thousands of people will be scrambling for tickets.
Our conversation will be electronically scrambled.
The words in each sentence are scrambled.
Maybe the alcohol has scrambled his brains.
The village was a 20-minute scramble away.
The usual scramble for the bathroom every morning. A scramble to carry the baggage into the house.
It was a mad scramble trying to get things ready in time.
Scrambled egg.
Scrambled egg.
Scrambler.
Scrambler.
Scrambling.
Scrambling.
Scramjet.
Scramjet.
Scrap.
Scrap.
He wrote his address on a scrap of paper.
A rug made out of old scraps of material.
The equipment was sold for scrap.
Scrap metal fetched high prices after the war.
My mother fed the dog on scraps to save money.
He obtained every scrap of information available. There isn't a single scrap of evidence.
He's always getting into scraps with other dogs.
We believe that car tax should be scrapped. 2 aircraft carriers are being scrapped this year.
Scrapbook.
Scrapbook.
Scrape.
Scrape.
Scrape the carrots and slice them thinly.
The earth was scraped away to uncover a trapdoor.
Teresa scraped the mud off her boots.
The two of them scraped their dishes clean.
The coat was too long. The hem scraped the pavement.
I heard the side of the car scrape against the wall. I scraped my knee painfully on the concrete.
Chairs scraped loudly as they stood up.
He opened the gate quietly, trying not to let it scrape on the gravel.
The Tories may scrape home, but it's unlikely.
It was clear that the party was scraping the barrel for competent politicians.
Her blonde hair was scraped back into a ponytail.
We can scrape by, thanks to what we grow ourselves.
Labour scraped in by a small majority.
He just scraped into college.
I managed to scrape through the exam.
She scraped together the last of her savings.
They could hardly scrape up enough money for the train fare.
I came away from the accident with only cuts and scrapes.
He got into all sorts of scrapes as a boy.
He heard the scrape of chairs being dragged across the floor.
Scrape over. Scrape over.
Scraper.
Scraper.
A paint scraper.
Scrap heap.
Scrap heap.
3 years later, he was on the political scrap heap.
Scrapey.
Scrapey.
Scrapings.
Scrapings.
Scrap paper.
Scrap paper.
Scrappy.
Scrappy.
Scrappy notes from the meeting.
A scrappy team that plays hard.
Scratch.
Scratch.
John yawned and scratched his leg.
Try not to scratch.
He was scratching at the bites on his arm.
She ran at him and scratched his face.
Don't scratch yourself on the thorns. I'm afraid I've scratched your car.
Some of the prisoners had scratched their names on the walls. A few chickens scratched around in the yard.
A dog scratching at the door to be let in.
I scratched away a little of the paint with my fingernail.
I have scratched his name from the list.
His pen scratched away on the paper.
I think we have only scratched the surface of this problem.
This crisis has politicians scratching their heads and wondering what to do.
Homeless people scratching around for a place to shelter.
Emma's name had been scratched out.
There were deep scratches all over her face.
Don't worry, it's only a scratch.
She was unharmed apart from a few cuts and scratches. There was a big scratch on the car door.
We had to start again from scratch.
He had built the business up from scratch.
Some of this work isn't up to scratch.
We spent thousands of pounds getting the house up to scratch.
He stretched and had a scratch. He brushed his hair and gave his scalp a good scratch.
I heard the scratch of an animal's claws on the door.
Scratch card.
Scratch card.
Scratching. Scratching.
Scratchings.
Scratchings.
Scratchmaster. Scratchmaster.
Scratch pad.
Scratch pad.
Scratch paper.
Scratch paper.
Scratchy.
Scratchy.
A scratchy woolen jumper. A scratchy old recording of some folk songs.
Scrawl.
Scrawl.
He scrawled his name at the bottom. The note was written in his usual illegible scrawl.
Scrawny.
Scrawny.
A scrawny kid in jeans and a t-shirt. A few scrawny hens.
Scream.
Scream.
After the first few shots, people started screaming.
A screaming baby. She jumped to her feet, screaming in terror.
The children were screaming with laughter.
She was screaming her head off.
She began to scream blue murder.
He was dragged kicking and screaming to a nearby van.
Get out, she screamed. He screamed out her name.
I screamed for help.
He screamed at her to go away. The crowd continued to scream abuse at him.
The police car approached, its sirens screaming.
We heard screams coming from the flat.
She saw the knife and let out a scream.
He fell back with a scream of terror and pain.
The scream of a jet taking off.
The film was a scream.
Screamingly.
Screamingly.
A screamingly funny film. A screamingly funny film.
Scree.
Scree.
A scree slope.
Screech.
Screech.
Look out! She screeched.
They screeched with laughter.
She screeched at me to take off my muddy shoes.
A van screeched onto the road in front of me.
The car screeched to a halt.
A screech of laughter.
The screech of tires.
Screed.
Screed.
Screen.
Screen.
A computer with an 18-inch colour screen. He went on staring at the TV screen. Her picture appeared on the screen.
It's easy to change the text on the screen before printing it.
He was horrified at some of the images he saw on the screen.
This is the first time the play has been adapted for the big screen.
A star of stage and screen.
His first appearance on screen. A well-known screen actor.
There was a screen around his bed.
The house was hidden behind a screen of bushes.
The business was just a screen for his drug-dealing activities.
The company is offering a free health screen to all employees.
All women over 50 will be regularly screened.
It is now possible to screen babies for diabetes.
A line of trees screened the house from the road. The film is being screened around the country.
The match will be screened live on television.
Police are very careful when screening politicians' bodyguards.
Applicants are screened for security.
You can use an answer phone to screen your phone calls before you answer them.
The back part of the room had been screened off. Sun lotions screen out damaging ultraviolet light.
An answering service can screen out nuisance calls.
Screen door.
Screen door.
Screen dump.
Screen dump.
Screening.
Screening.
A screening of Spielberg's new movie.
Screening for breast cancer.
Security screening of airline passengers.
Screenplay.
Screenplay.
Screen printing.
Screen printing.
Screensaver.
Screensaver.
Screenshot.
Screenshot.
Screen test.
Screen test.
Screenwriter.
Screenwriter.
Screw.
Screw.
Fix the frame in position and tighten the screws.
The chairs were screwed to the floor.
The government has started to tighten the screws on illegal share dealers.
The wooden frame should be screwed onto the wall.
The lens screws onto the front of the camera.
She carefully screwed the cap back onto the toothpaste.
She screwed the letter up and threw it in the bin.
I screwed my handkerchief into a ball.
The kids were screwing around down by the bus station.
You'd better not screw up this time.
She realized that she had screwed up her life.
He screwed up his eyes against the bright light.
Her face was screwed up with pain.
It really screwed her up when her mother died.
I finally screwed up enough courage to talk to her.
Screwball.
Screwball.
Screwball comedy.
Screwball comedy.
Screwdriver.
Screwdriver.
Screwed up.
Screwed up.
Screw top.
Screw top.
Screwy.
Screwy.
Scribble.
Scribble.
I scribbled his phone number in my address book.
He scribbled down our names.
Someone had scribbled all over my picture.
I couldn't read his scribble.
Scribbler.
Scribbler.
Scribe.
Scribe.
Scrimmage.
Scrimmage.
Scrimp.
Scrimp.
They scrimped and saved for years to buy their own home.
Script.
Script.
They write all their own scripts.
A film script.
Arabic script. A diary entry written in neat black script.
Scripted.
Scripted.
Scriptural.
Scriptural.
Scripture.
Scripture.
The way God is portrayed in Scripture.
Hindu scriptures.
Scriptwriter.
Scriptwriter.
Scroll.
Scroll.
He scrolled through the document.
Could you scroll down a few lines?
Scroll bar.
Scroll bar.
Scrooge.
Scrooge.
Scrotum.
Scrotum.
Scrounge.
Scrounge.
A group of children scrounging for food.
I managed to scrounge some money off my dad.
Leroy would scrounge around for old car parts.
Scrub.
Scrub.
She was on her hands and knees scrubbing the floor.
He scrubbed the dirt off his boots.
The table needs to be scrubbed clean.
She scrubbed at her face with a tissue.
We scrubbed the idea in the end.
The liquid is used to scrub carbon dioxide from power plant exhaust gases.
The rooms are all scrubbed out once a week.
I gave the floor a good scrub.
Scrubber.
Scrubber.
Scrubbing brush.
Scrubbing brush.
Scrubby.
Scrubby.
Scrubland.
Scrubland.
Scruff.
Scruff.
Scruffy.
Scruffy.
A scruffy old pair of jeans.
Scruffy shops.
A scruffily dressed man.
Scrum.
Scrum.
He struggled through the scrum of people to the kitchen.
Scrum half.
Scrum half.
Scrummage.
Scrummage.
Scrummy.
Scrummy.
Scrump.
Scrump.
Scrumptious.
Scrumptious.
A scrumptious chocolate cake.
Scrumpy.
Scrumpy.
Scrunch.
Scrunch.
The dry leaves scrunched under our feet.
The scrunch of gravel.
I scrunched up the letter and threw it in the bin. He scrunched up his eyes and grinned.